Good morning. I'll try again. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. My name is Amy Montalto. I am the Executive Director of the New England chapter for JDRF, and I want to thank you all for coming out today for our second annual Living Well with T1D Symposium. I can honestly say we're absolutely thrilled at the response we got, that so many people came out. We hope you leave today feeling connected to JDRF with some new knowledge about how to better care for your loved one, and having met some other families to join you along this journey. So thank you so much for being here. JDRF's mission is to find a cure for diabetes and its complications through the support of research. JDRF is the leading global organization focused on T1D research. And beyond raising money for research, we also provide support and information to individuals and families with T1D across all stages. That's why we're here today. We extend our sincere thanks today to the Sarah and Greg Poulos family, who are our presenting sponsor. They are the reason that we were able to make today happen. And to Novo Nordisk, who is our keynote sponsor. I hope everybody is staying around to hear Will Cross later. It will be an amazing presentation. I'd also like to thank our vendors who you see across the back of the room. We have Dexcom, Glue T1D Exchange, Lilly Diabetes, Medtronic MiniMed, Novo Nordisk, Omnipod, Sanofi Diabetes, and Tandem Diabetes Care. Thank you all for being here and helping to support this event today. I also want to be thankful to our community vendors. We have the Barton Center for Diabetes Education, the College Diabetes Network, and Type 1 Diabetes TrialNet at Joslin Diabetes Center. Thank you for being with us today. You will have the opportunity to visit the vendor tables throughout the day. In addition, we have representatives from TrialNet. They will be screening for T1D-associated antibodies in first and second degree relatives of persons with diabetes. This will be to identify those that are increased risk of developing diabetes. It's now my great pleasure that I get to introduce Dr. Julia Greenstein. She will be providing an update on the research advances currently happening with JDRF funding. Dr. Greenstein is the Assistant Vice President for Cure Therapies at JDRF. So Julia, thank you for being here.
Well, thank you. It's really a pleasure to be here, and really exciting to be able to share with you how we've been thinking about our role in supporting research toward a cure for type 1 diabetes. JDRF has a vision for the future, and that vision is no type 1 diabetes. It's a pretty simple vision, but it's a huge goal. And what we understand is that the world without type 1 diabetes is not going to happen overnight. There's not one aha cure to this disease. But what we really want to aim for is a world where there's normal physiology in terms of glucose control restored, and no one would suffer from the impact of type 1 diabetes, its complications, its burden, and the damage that uncontrolled blood glucose can cause. What we're doing is funding research along an outline to get to this endpoint. But what we really need for you to understand is we know that it's possible. We can get there to no type 1 diabetes, but we just can't say exactly when. So we know we can get there faster by accelerating our fundraising and accelerating the amount of research that we can support. But we need to do things along the way, and that's really this idea of less until none. So our strategic plan in research includes obviously the ultimate goal of curing this disease. But what we really need to do is make incremental steps along the way to make therapies that will impact the lives of people with type 1 diabetes, keeping individuals healthy and safe until that cure is found. So really what we're doing is we're talking about a continuum of benefits to individuals with type 1 diabetes. Our past research and others' past research has really led to significant advances, some of which you can see from the vendors around the room. Since there's not going to be one single absolute experiment that's going to show us how to cure this disease, we need to do it in a stepwise fashion. And so our progress is really a series of breakthroughs across different therapeutic approaches occurring on different timelines. The path to the cure is a continuum, and that's something that it's important that you understand. As the therapies move across this continuum, what our goal is to lessen the side effects, to decrease the patient burden of taking care of their blood glucose day and day, and to decrease the future complications. As we move along that continuum, the glycemic control can be restored to a more normal glycemic control. And that is when you start approaching things that would be considered curative. If you could maintain normal physiology, then the patient burden, the side effects, and the complications will diminish. So JDRF is really the only global organization with a strategic plan to bring a continuous flow of life-changing therapies and ultimately a cure for type 1 diabetes. JDRF Research and JDRF Advocacy work in a partnership with public, private, academic, and corporate partners to expedite the discovery, development, and delivery of type 1 diabetic therapeutics. And we're really already making important advances. This is the way we look at what we call our research portfolio at JDRF, and we've segregated it into 3 separate buckets, but they actually interact with each other. The cure therapy area aim is to cure type 1 diabetes by replacing or regenerating beta cells and halting the autoimmune response. To treat type 1 diabetes, we want to advocate and develop new devices and therapies that can optimize blood glucose control and treat or prevent diabetic complications. And then in terms of prevention, we're trying to develop ways to stop diabetes before it actually ends up in uncontrolled glucose physiology. My team at JDRF is actually responsible for the cure and prevent portfolio. Aaron Kowalski is responsible for treat. And what you can see below those boxes is really the priority areas that we've been working on really sort of over the last 2 to 3 years, where we've decided we can't do everything. We need to prioritize places where we think JDRF dollars and JDRF energy will make a difference. So what I'm going to do today is sort of take you through just a little bit of each of the priority areas below those cure, treat, and prevent boxes. And we call this sort of approach our strategic plan or roadmap. And when we decide what to fund, what kind of research to fund, we look at this strategic roadmap and we say, does this fit in our priority areas or not? And that's sort of the first screen that we take in trying to decide how to invest JDRF dollars. So the first place is the artificial pancreas. The goal here is to automate technologies to help better control blood glucose levels. Few people, regardless of age, can focus intensely enough on the unrelenting balancing act that type 1 diabetes demands. And we really feel, and I think we're starting to see the benefit here, technology really can help here. So JDRF launched the Artificial Pancreas Project 7 years ago with the goal of driving the development and approval of automated technologies to help people with type 1 diabetes maintain better control of blood glucose levels. When JDRF stepped in, there was minimal direct investment being made in an integrated smart technology to automate the most routine elements of insulin management. JDRF's investment, leadership, and collaboration has radically changed that landscape. New technology, new interests in the field are bringing forward faster acting insulins, faster mechanisms of developing insulin and delivering insulin, better CGM sensors, and new pump designs. JDRF's active presence in this environment has led to a renaissance in this diabetes technology world and important new opportunities to help people with T1D to manage their disease more effectively will result from that funding. Artificial pancreas systems will be the most revolutionary advance in diabetes care since the discovery of insulin. Like the body's pancreas, artificial pancreas systems will react to rising blood glucose levels by combining monitoring technology with insulin pumps to provide the right amount of insulin at the right time. And in closing the loop, eventually the individual not having to really be an active part of that management. The artificial pancreas system is aimed at resulting in much tighter blood glucose control, lowering the risk of complications later in life, and will also reduce the constant worry about blood glucose levels and what must be done to manage them. JDRF is committed itself to advancing progress in future advanced artificial pancreas systems with initiatives to develop faster acting insulin and faster insulin delivery. Those two things are really needed to boost the overall performance and efficiency of an artificial pancreas system. To improving blood glucose sensing technology, because that's a critical component in having this technology really control a tight blood glucose level, and to develop systems that can add the other hormones that are dysregulated in type 1 diabetes, which would allow for a much more precise control. The other program on the treat side that I'd like to tell you about is glucose responsive insulin. What does that mean? That is a form of insulin that would only work when the blood glucose was high. So you could inject a depot or a high concentration of this glucose responsive insulin. It would only become active as the blood glucose started to rise. It's a big goal. It's an awesome sort of focus for our research, but it would profoundly change the lives of people with type 1 diabetes. The need for insulin injections to lower blood glucose would largely disappear. It would make life easier and simpler for type 1 diabetic individuals and would also improve overall blood glucose control with all the positive benefits associated with that outcome. Glucose responsive insulin is an example of JDRF's investment strategy to accelerate the pace of science leading to cures and treatments for people with type 1 diabetes by promoting highly innovative and risky approaches to new therapy development. One very exciting opportunity that many of you in the local Boston environment may have heard about before is smart insulin. In 2003, an MIT researcher named Todd Zion started a company called Smart Cells. This company developed a form of glucose-responsive insulin, which they called smart insulin. JDRF invested in that company in a very early, high-risk moment to help them with their early development efforts and to support preclinical safety and efficacy testing. Following that JDRF early investment and positive results in some early animal studies, Merck announced that it had acquired Smart Cells with the intent of supporting the continued development of smart insulin. This is a great step forward to getting these sorts of approaches out into the clinic. This is we feel, a validation of JDRF's strategy to support early-stage, high-risk therapy development to establish proof of concept to draw a major drug manufacturer to this field. And without having a major manufacturer involved in this sort of effort, it would be impossible to go through all the regulatory costs to get a novel insulin like this approved by the FDA and other worldwide regulatory agencies. So it's always important to look at the commercialization path and to manage getting the right companies involved at the right time. JDRF is also stimulating progress in this field by what we did a year ago was to offer a glucose-responsive insulin Grand Challenge Prize. So we put out a Grand Challenge Prize just for ideas. So scientists all over the world were challenged. If you could make a glucose-responsive insulin, how would you do it? All you have to do is write us a paragraph about how you would do it. And we got all these submissions, and we gave out a prize to 3 individuals who came up with really novel ideas about how to do this. And now we're looking at funding those people, or people who can't, some of those people don't actually have the technical skills to practice their idea that they wrote on this piece of paper, but we are going to fund research around those 3 areas. And so we believe that it's always prudent to seed and support multiple approaches to an important problem like this. So it's great that Smart Cells and Merck are working in this area, but we need competition, we need better ideas, so we'll continue to foster research in this area. Now let's get to some of the cure therapy technologies. One is beta cell encapsulation, and for those of you who can't tell, I'm not the artist who did these slides. That's actually supposed to be a shark cage with a scuba diver in there. We actually show a shark cage and a shark circling around. I think it's more effective. But we're basically trying to do, if you think about that diver, think about beta cells being in a cage. And if we could have beta cells in a protective cage to keep out the autoimmune response, we could implant beta cells or islets surrounded by this protective shield. And those cells would be able to provide physiologic glucose control and eliminate the daily burden of disease management for those people living with type 1 diabetes. It would mean no multiple daily insulin injections, no pump therapy, no more constant blood testing, and no more carb counting. In short, people with type 1 would be liberated to go about their daily lives for extended periods of time as if they didn't have the disease at all. JDRF researchers are working to develop easily implanted cages or devices composed of beta cells or islets surrounded by this protective shield. The encapsulated beta cells would sense a person's blood glucose level and produce insulin as needed, while the barrier would protect from the autoimmune attack that initially triggered the onset of type 1 diabetes. Encapsulation keeps the newly implanted cells alive by hiding them from the immune system, providing a safe environment where they can function normally. The cells can constantly assess the amount of glucose in the blood and release exactly the correct amount of insulin, just like a person without type 1 diabetes, beta cells does in their pancreas 24/7, 365 days a year. This therapy overcomes one of the major obstacles that we've seen in replacing beta cells by transplantation, and that is it eliminates the need for immunosuppressive drugs. When a person gets a transplant, they have to take very toxic immunosuppressive drugs to not reject that tissue. And so what we're trying to do is eliminate the need for those toxic drugs by putting the beta cells in this protective cage. Our goal is to accelerate progress in a number of encapsulation approaches, moving them into human clinical trials as quickly as possible. JDRF has already supported some of the first human trials to evaluate select encapsulation technologies. For example, in our industry partnerships, we're testing the ability of encapsulated pig islets to reverse severe hypoglycemia unawareness in humans. We're also helping another company advance stem cell precursors that would differentiate or become beta cells once they were transplanted. So we're very excited about the potential to change the face of diabetes therapy with approaches like this. The other thing we're trying to do is, rather than replace beta cells by transplantation, we're trying to regenerate an individual's own beta cells. And so this really leverages off this, I mean, you've heard a lot about this in the media, this growing field of regenerative medicine. JDRF has really helped shape the efforts in this area in terms of pancreas and beta cell regeneration. We've funded dozens of human trials to test a variety of immune interactions, and each one has added to our understanding of what's necessary to stop the autoimmune response. So in this case, we need to regenerate the beta cells, and we need to stop the ongoing autoimmune response. We feel that this area will really lead to a permanent cure for type 1. Ultimate success requires overcoming huge challenges, giving the body the ability to produce new beta cells to replace those destroyed by the autoimmune attack in an environment where the attack can't happen again. And so we're leading the way to trying to overcome these obstacles. We're engaged in a range of research to create an abundant supply of new beta cells. This includes research on stem cells to understand how a pancreas actually makes beta cells naturally. It includes research on what we call reprogramming. We're trying to turn one cell into another cell, and we're trying to turn other cells into functional beta cells. And one of the most promising areas of research today is what we call beta cell regeneration. We're working to learn how the pancreas can become its own source of new beta cells. Our researchers have already demonstrated in the body a normal ability to grow new beta cells in certain situations like pregnancy and weight gain. Normal individuals, when in response to pregnancy or in response to weight gain, actually make more beta cells. If we can understand how the body physiologically does that, we think that we can turn those signals on in an individual with type 1 diabetes. And those are the kinds of things we're trying to understand in order to develop novel approaches to beta cell regeneration. A second focus, which is also required, is understanding the autoimmune response. And we're rapidly advancing our understanding of the human immune system. We've funded work in this area over the last decade. It was leading to the discovery of a number of suspected triggers associated with the onset of type 1 diabetes, including certain viral infections. And this opens the door to the development of new approaches that would prevent the hallmark immune response that causes type 1 diabetes. We're taking approaches like those that I'm sure some of you are familiar with when people take allergy desensitization shots. If you're allergic to cat, you can get shots of cat antigen, and that can change your immune response, and a lot of people lose their asthma or their allergy in that situation. Well, we're trying to say if we can take bits of beta cells, can we turn the autoimmune response into a response that's no longer pathogenic? And so we're actively working in that area. We call that antigen-specific vaccines or tolerance-inducing approaches. Now, some of these same approaches that we're talking about using to cure type 1 diabetes can be used in a variety of prevention settings. So what we would like to do is to be able to prevent people from ever getting type 1 diabetes. And in some ways, it may be easier to control the immune response before it starts rather than after. So using infectious disease as an example, polio has really never been cured, but an effective vaccine has largely eradicated this disease. So if we could move to safe and cheaper approaches to controlling the autoimmune response, you could eventually see prevention being a reasonable approach in new generations of children and adults never having to face the threat of type 1 diabetes. So we're pursuing both what we call primary and secondary prevention. Primary prevention means a childhood vaccine inhibiting the disease before any of the process really starts. What we're trying to do in secondary prevention is stop the disease once it's initiated. So, Amy was talking about TrialNet being here and screening for autoantibodies. We know now today that the appearance of autoantibodies against beta cell antigens occurs before a person is diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. So if we can use that as what we call a biomarker for somebody who's going to eventually get or has a high percentage probability of eventually getting type 1, can we treat those individuals and stop them or delay the onset of type 1 diabetes? That's called secondary prevention. And so we're trying approaches to really stop the autoimmune response in its tracks. It's becoming more and more important because the number of Americans who are diagnosed with type 1 diabetes is actually growing at a rate of 2.6% a year. So the incidence of type 1 diabetes is increasing year over year at an outstanding percentage. The goal of secondary prevention is to preserve beta cell function in newly diagnosed individuals. And these approaches will include reducing the inflammation in the pancreas because we think that's one of the triggers of the immune response. It means boosting the beta cells that are still there in their survival. And it means suppressing the autoimmune attack. And so we're working in all of those areas. Primary prevention really means preventing the autoimmune attack before it starts. And this is when we talk about universal childhood vaccinations, like getting your mumps or your rubella vaccination. We're looking at the potential of viral vaccines to impact this, and we're also looking at those antigen-specific or beta cell autoantigen-specific tolerance approaches. Both of these approaches have shown considerable progress. Critical knowledge gaps remain, and we need to make progress in screening for the onset of the autoimmune attack. We need to better understand how the human disease progresses that will allow us to develop tailored ways to intervene in a variety of early stages to prevent insulin dependence. And we need to identify ways to identify those individuals, things called biomarkers, that will yield insight into the risk and susceptibility to speed up prevention trials. So it's a big job. No other disease-focused nonprofit can bring together the combination of skills and resources that JDRF has to make it truly enable a meaningful impact on type 1 diabetes research. That's why JDRF is uniquely positioned to create a future without type 1 diabetes. Our research expertise, fueled by a dedicated internal team of 24 PhDs and MD scientists with experience in translating research in academia and industry, is driving toward our strategic goals. This high level of expertise allows us to effectively partner with academics, foundations, industry, governments, regulators, and insurers to provide, putting us at the center of a globally coordinated effort to move research forward. JDRF advocacy is a powerful mix of grassroots and national efforts to engage lawmakers in supporting legislation that encourages type 1 diabetes research funding. A key effort for this group is the multi-year renewals of the Special Diabetes Funding Program at NIH. Since its inception in 1997, the SDP program has provided $1.9 billion for research through NIH, with the goal of impacting type 1 diabetes research. It's resulted in treatments and management used every day to help people lead better lives with type 1 diabetes. JDRF advocacy has led the way in securing this vital research funding for type 1 diabetes, and will we will make sure that our efforts will let key lawmakers know the importance of continued and uninterrupted funding in this area. And I would say in our legislative environment today, this is really scary. We just got next year's commitment. This is year by year now. There was a time where we got 3 years of funding, which made research planning a lot easier. In the legislative environment today, we're going to need a lot of advocates out there calling their congressmen to really make this continue to happen. Our advocacy power allows us to have influence beyond funding in other key areas of government and industry that impacts type 1 diabetes research and product commercialization. The unique combination of skills, expertise, and influence at JDRF allows us to make important strides in the regulatory arena and to help break down barriers to innovation and research progress in type 1 diabetes. We have had a very successful effort with the FDA and the artificial pancreas program, where we've really helped craft the regulatory guidelines so that companies understand what the pathway is to product approval. And that's a key element in getting manufacturers committed to developing products in this area. And we'll continue to use this model in other products and devices as they approach commercial viability. So you're here today. Thank you for being here. JDRF Research is making important progress to fight forward to cure, better treat, and prevent type 1 diabetes. And it's really not possible without you all in the room. Please join us, continue to help us achieve our goals. There's an incredibly large number of ways you can help. Make a gift to JDRF, participate in a fundraising event. The 31st annual Boston Gala is on Saturday, May 18th, and I have it. It's definitely not going to snow, so you'll be safe. Our Boston Walk for Diabetes is set for Saturday, October 5th at the DCR Hatch Cell, and the walk in central Massachusetts at a new location is tentatively scheduled for the day after, Sunday, October 6th. There's a number of volunteer fundraisers and endurance events coming up. You can volunteer at an upcoming event through JDRF outreach programs and in the office. You can participate in clinical research if you're a person with type 1 diabetes, and there's avenues to find out about that today with TrialNet and the T1D exchange. And that's for people with type 1 diabetes, and it's also for close relatives with someone with type 1 diabetes. If you haven't had a chance to stop by the JDRF booth, we're happy to tell you a lot about how much more you can get involved with JDRF. And thank you.
Thank you, Julia. And thank you to all of you for being here and for helping us support all of these exciting research initiatives. I can't help it. Every time I hear what we're doing, I get teary-eyed and excited because we are really getting closer. And I know how hard it is to hear that over and over and over again. But when you see the research and you see the way that we are moving towards better treatments and to a cure, it is truly motivating. And that is thanks to all of you out there who are helping us as government advocates, who are walking in our walk, riding in our ride, coming to our galas. It takes all of us. This is a village disease and it requires all of us to work together. So thank you. We will start our sessions in about 10 minutes, and I have a couple housekeeping items to make sure we all know what's going on today. The first item being that the sessions for the adults are downstairs. JDRF staff all have a little yellow ribbon, and with that yellow ribbon you can find us if you get a little bit lost. Our kids' room is down the hall in the Cabbage Junior Ballroom. You will be back here for lunch between 11:45 and noon, and at 12:30 Will Cross will speak. We hope you will all stay for that. In between and until we head off to the first session, please visit our vendor booths. They're all wonderful supporters of our mission and all here to serve your family member as well. And obviously, if you have any questions, find me, find somebody else with a yellow ribbon. But thank you for being here. We hope you enjoy the symposium. And we hope you let us know what you think at the end. We have evaluation forms. Tell us what you want. We'll bring it to you. Thanks so much and have a great day.